Welcome back guys, it's me Mobile Bro, your best friend when it comes to mobile gaming. So today I have something special for you. I created a tier list for legendary heroes, only, without any fate core or anything else. So yeah, I will only talk about the S rank and maybe a few of those from the A rank today. But yeah, let's just dive in. So first on the list will be Carina. She's the cutest waifu in this game, I think. And not only that, her skills are amazing. Look at her passive skill. Grants heal 100% of the attack to an ally if they take damage and their health drops under 20%. Gain mana, 1 mana, if the caster's health is less than 20% when triggered. Okay? And here it is. The first skill from her requires 3 mana and deals 210 damage to one enemy, heals one ally by 30% of on maximum health when the skill hits, cleanses all debuffs and damage over time, effects on all allies. And a second active skill is Moonlight Flower, requires 5 mana and is a burst. Heals all allies by 27% of own maximum health, cleanses all debuffs and damage over time, effects on all allies. And here's the special thing, revives all dead allies. So where is she good? Where can you use her? So basically I use her in PvP, PvE, in all dungeons, in the labyrinth. She's the greatest healer in the game, in my opinion. So yeah, that's for Carina. Let's go to the second one. So the second on our list is Sharpay. Her passive skill, Final Hit 2, attacks if an enemy takes damage and its health drops to 10% or less. Gain 1 mana if target survives. Her first active skill, Cross Execution, requires 3 mana and deals 252 damage to one enemy, and here's the special thing, if the enemy dies, the turn resets, that means she gets another turn. And her second active skill, Fader Blast, deals 336 damage to all back row enemies. That means she's a great hero for the PvP. And let's dive to the third one. The third hero on our list is Carina. She has the same passive skill as Sharpay, the hero before. So it is Final Hit 2, attacks if an enemy takes damage and its health drops to 10% or less, gain 1 mana if if the target survives. Okay, and here is the thing, her first active skill is Shining Boomerang, requires only 2 mana, deals 180 damage to one enemy, and the turn resets after the target dies, so pretty similar to Sharpay but makes a little bit less damage. And she has her second active skill, Chain Slicer. It's a single target attack and deals 840 damage to one enemy. This is a huge amount of damage, so she will be really good in some labyrinth or PvP. Believe me, even in the story she's a monster. Okay, so let's go to the third one. So the third one would be Legger. She's a healer. Her passive skill grants heal 100% of the attack to an ally if they take damage and their health drops under 20%, gain 1 mana if the caster's health is less than 20% when triggered. Okay, so her first active skill is a burst. That means the more mana you have, the more this skill will heal up. So it heals all allies by 13% of on maximum health, cleanses all debuffs and damages over time, effects on all allies, and revives all dead allies. This is amazing. And her second active skill is Realm of Punishment, requires 5 mana, deals 142 damage to all enemies, heals all allies by 27% of own maximum health when the skill hits, and cleanses all debuffs and damages over time, effects on all allies. Whoa, she's a beast. For the story and for the PvE, she's a beast. For the PvP, I don't think so. Well, I don't see any use for her right now, but yeah, it all depends on your team and on which heroes you have. You could use her also in the PvP. So let's dive into the fifth on our list. So the fifth on our list is this little cutie with those beautiful shiny wings lapping. She's a healer too, and her passive skill is First Aid 2, grants heal 100% of the attack to an ally if they take damage and their health drops under 20%. Gain mana if the caster's health is less than 20% when triggered. Her first active skill is Light of Purification. It requires 2 mana, deals 150 damage to one enemy, grants heal over time. That heal is one ally by 10% of own maximum health every turn for 4 turns when the skill hits. cleanses all debuff and damage over time effects from the targets. Her second active skill is Blessing of Fairies. It's a burst, the more mana you have, the more it will heal up. So it heals all allies by 13% of own maximum health, cleanses all debuffs and damage over time effects on all allies, and revives all allies. So where is she good? Basically everywhere if you don't have a healer. She is great. Use her, mostly you can use her for PvP and maybe even for the dungeons and the labyrinth. Yeah, try her out. So the sixth on our list is Spica. She's a defense type hero. Her passive is first 2. Upon taking damage, deals damage 30% to and afflicts stun on the attacker for 5 turns. When hit, gain 1 mana if health of target is 80% or more. Her first active skill is Regaining Strikes, deals 150 damage to one enemy and afflicts freeze to the target for 4 turns. Her second active skill is Piercing Moon, requires 4 mana and deals 400 damage to one enemy. So that set makes her perfect for PvP. And the seventh on our list will be, it's Yahoo. Yahoo is my favorite new cutie. I fell in love with her. She looks amazing. Look at her weapons. Man, she knows how to destroy a man in a second. But let's talk about her skills. So her passive is Final Hit 2. Attacks if an enemy takes damage and its health drops to 10% or less, gain 1 mana if target survives. Her first active skill is 8 Triagrams, requires 3 mana, increases all allies' attack by 32% of own attack for 8 turns. And her second active skill requires 4 mana, Blooming Red Lotus, deals 360 damage to one enemy. The turn resets if the target dies, so that makes her great for PvP content. And also, she is a machine type, and this is something really good for PvP, believe me. But if you have another hero that is maybe better in your opinion, use them, but I use her a lot because, yeah, I'm in love with her. So let's dive into the next hero on our list. So the last on our list will be Belle. She's a light support magical hero. Her passive is First Aid 2, grants heal 100% of attack to an ally if they take damage and their health drops under 20%, gain mana 1 mana if the caster's health is less than 20% when triggered. Her first active skill requires 0 mana, it's called Benevolent Judgment, deals 20% damage to all enemies, heals all allies by 3% of own maximum health when the skill hits, cleanses all debuff and damages over time effects on all allies. And her second active skill is Light of Serene. It's a burst and it requires 3 mana, heals all allies by 13% of own maximum health, cleanses all debuffs and damages over time effects on all allies, and revives all dead allies. So Belle is very good for the labyrinth and for the PvP content. Of course, you can use her in PvP in your tag teams, because sometimes there is a moment where a reviver will really help you out. Okay, so this was the last one from our S rank tier list. Let's jump to the A rank tier list. Boom! Okay, so let's go over some A tier heroes. And the first one would be Astartes. She's a nature attack magical type hero. Her passive is Counter 2, counters upon taking damage, gain 1 mana if target dies. Her first active skill requires 3 mana, it's a spinning attack and it deals 420 damage to one enemy. And her second active skill, Reckless Scratching. It's a burst that's awesome and it requires 5 mana and it deals 840 damage to one enemy. So she is great for PvP and for some stages in the labyrinth if you don't have Root Lair. And yeah, we could easily rank her at S rank. And that's it, she's a great hero. Let's go to the second one. The second on the list is Adams. He is a darkness attack physical type. His passive is Counter 2, like Astartes, and his active requires 2 mana, it's Crushing Shadows, deals 300 damage to one enemy, And his second active skill, it's also a burst, Reaper's Cycle, and it requires 4 mana and it deals 600 damage to one enemy. If you read about him in this game, he's the favorite hero of all players. He destroys everything and everyone in the labyrinth and in the PvE and PvP. So yeah, and the third and last one for this video is Degas. He's a frost defense physical hero. And his passive is block 2, afflicts all enemies with provoke if an ally takes damage and its health drops to 30% or less for 10 turns, and grants heal over time to yourself that heals 20% of current attack every turn for 5 turns. Gain 1 mana if your health is 20% or less when triggered. His first active skill is Aegis of Faith, requires 3 mana, increases own maximum health by 37% for 8 turns, and share health with all allies for 16 turns. And his second active skill is Cursed Trident, requires 5 mana, deals 142 damage to all enemies, and afflicts targets with freeze for 5 turns. So he is great for every kind of content. So yeah, that's it. Like and subscribe for this kind of content, and yeah, see you next time, guys.